For the past 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, Nigeria has been having challenges that are beckoning and waiting for answers and solutions. That is why we are bringing to you our program, State of the Nation. And this is going to come up on our flagship program this morning on ITV. I am hereby inviting you to join me, Bola Bakare, your host, on State of the Nation, so that we can hasten the motions that brings national development. It's going to be a regular basis on Tuesdays. Make it a date with me. I'll be there waiting for you, and then we shall discuss Nigeria on an holistic level. Welcome back to your lofty program, State of the Nation, where we hasten the motions for national development. And like I keep saying, when it comes to national development, it's a matter for you and I. It's a collective thing. This morning we shall dwell on a factor that drives life, that drives governance, that drives democracy, that drives our livelihood, that drives our existence. And what do I mean by that? Politics. It is the politics that gives us what we call democracy, and that ends up being the government in place, or the government of the day. But on a regular basis, there is that element of shenanigans, the politics of governance. It becomes a case of, is it the politics that is driving the governance, or is it the governance that is driving the politics? Let me use an analogy here for you. Is it the dog wagging the tail, or the tail is wagging the dog? I'll tell you this. With me in the studio this morning is my brother, Dr. Mukhtar Imam. He is a lecturer from the Bayes University here in Abuja. He is good with human relations, both international and local, and you can add the element of diplomacy into it. So in other words, this morning you will be getting facts as to what is it in politics that drives governance, and what is it that the government is not doing that it is shying away and dancing to the tune of politicians and politicking. Honestly, it's not an easy one. It is a complex issue, because there is no grand divide between politics and governance. But there are instances where the politics either overdrives the governance, underdrives the governance, or lead the governance astray. Join me in welcoming to the studio my brother, Dr. Mukhtar Imam.
Thank you for having me.
My brother, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much.
Same here, same here, same here. From my opening, I have been able to lay the brass tacks for Nigerians listening to us. And in honest truth, we all have different opinions as to different topical issues. But what I want you to do for us, first, in short words, is this element of what is politics, what is governance, before we now talk in terms of how does A affect B or B affect A. Give us a definition of politics and governance, my brother.
Thank you very much. You see, politics in essence refers to an interplay.
Okay.
A pattern of relation. And I think the most important element in defining politics is to understand that there is an order. And that order is what drives this pattern in relationship between the substructure and the superstructure.
That's right. That's right.
In every society, there is the existence of two basic structures. And these structures are what we refer to as the substructure and the superstructure. Etymologically, scholars have defined, or one of the most generally acceptable definition of politics is to look at politics as the authoritative allocation of resources. And when you look at that definition, it tells you that there are two things at play. One of them is there is an authority, and what that authority is doing is distributing equitably resources.
Like you're laying emphasis on that word.
There has to be equitable distribution, equitable distribution of resources. And these resources we speak about are natural resources, which also encompasses everything around the social contract,
That's right.
including education as well.
That's right.
So the distribution of resources equitably among citizens within a particular society is what we mean by politics.
Right. All right.
Governance, on the other hand, basically refers to the structure of administration and all of its components component parts that aid, that interrelate, that are interdependent to drive the process of administering leadership to the people and ensuring that the dividends of governance, which is administration, trickles down to the last person.
That's true.
So there is, like you said in your opening, a very thin line between politics and governance.
Naturally, yes, yes.
Etymologically.
Thank you for that opening. You know, like I told you, excuse me, my viewers out there, that we are going to enjoy today's discourse because we have a lecturer here. I have turned the studio into his classroom, and we are his students. We share opinions together. We are going to learn from him. We've been able to know, he's giving us definition about politics and governance. But I would like to go ahead by saying one bit. When it comes to politics that drives the governance, we need to go local a little bit. Let's talk about ourselves a little bit. There are instances where we do not have the enabling political setup that gives us the governance that we wish. But basically, this one boils down to the element of leadership and followership. I believe it's the followership that puts the leadership in place, and whatever you get, you ask for it. But at the same time, are we doing the right thing at the right time? Because I would like to bring in an example here, an example that happened a few days back in Chile. Chile has been a country under military rule for a long while. It's been kind of a pariah state, so to speak.
Yeah.
But as at a few days back, we now saw a change and a turn in events when a 35-year-old boy became the president-elect. What trips me the most about it was the incumbent, who is twice his age, went on air and congratulated him. That, oh, you've won. He didn't fight him. He didn't go to court. He told him, you've won. You have a good job. You have a yeoman's job on your hands. I pray you do a good job. And at the same time, what I love about what he said was, do not forget the element and the experience of gray hair. All he's telling him that learn to run references back to us so that things can get better.
Yeah.
Let me show you a clip of what I'm talking about. Can you please let us have a clip of what transpired in Chile about this new young man who's the president-elect?
Y sé que en los años que vienen se juega el futuro de nuestro país. Por eso les garantizo desde ya que seré un presidente que cuide a la democracia y no que la exponga, que escuche más de lo que habla, que busque la unidad y que atienda día a día las necesidades de las personas, que combata firmemente los privilegios de unos pocos y trabaje cada día por la calidad de la familia chilena. Ahí está. Ahí. Lo vieron, va en camino. Va en camino.
That was the young man, the 35-year-old man, Gabriel Boric, who is the president-elect in Chile. What I'm trying to say in essence is, keep at the back of your mind our topic, the politics of governance. Politics is being played in Chile. And at the same time, the politics has been given a fair chance for the people to determine who their leaders will be. Let us put it on a global scale. And as Nigerians, let us put it on a local scale. Can we have this kind of Chilean experience here in Nigeria? And if we're going to have it, what are the parameters? What should we do? What shouldn't we do? Please, let's share our insights.
Well, you see, the challenge with Nigerian political system is it has its uniqueness and its peculiarities.
Yeah,
it's no different. We're peculiar people. But it's no different from African politics. You see, those ingredients, those variables that play out within the Nigerian political context, you find them hovering around the head of virtually the 50-plus country on the African continent. Within the dynamics of the political system on the African continent.
That's right.
So the uniqueness within this political space is what makes it different from what we see being practiced in other parts of the world.
Okay.
Now, this uniqueness cannot be discharged from our historical experiences, from colonialism, and of course, to where we have gotten to, basically. But then the reality is that politics should be universal.
Yes,
the art of politics, the art of politics should be universal.
Okay.
The core of politics should be universal.
Okay.
Because recall, we define politics as the authoritative allocation of resources. It means there's an authority, and the responsibility of that authority is to respect the social contract which it has inadvertently gone into with the citizenry. And what does the social contract theory dictate? That citizens give up some of their rights so that leaders, politicians, governance, or governments will in turn protect other rights of theirs. And we have just talked about those rights to include the right to education, the rights to welfare, and so on and so forth. So those central elements of politics are basically universal things that should be there.
Yes. Of course, yes.
But we find that in the political context of Nigeria and Africa, there are gaps. There is a vacuum in terms of politics, in terms of governance. And like I said, there's a very thin line between politics and governance.
Of course, yes.
So the experience we have just witnessed in Chile is not something that is sacrosanct. There is nothing religious about that. The reality is it can be replicated all over the world, but it has to do with the social psychological conditioning of the people.
Of the people, yes, of the people.
Like I have constantly said, Nigeria's challenge, I don't like to use the term problem, is not necessarily about our political system. That is the existence of structures and institutions, not as much also as it is about our micro and macroeconomic policies, but it is much more about our social psychological conditioning as a people, because the leaders are an extract from amongst the people.
Us, the people, yes.
So you find that often at times there is a misplay, a mismatch in what is happening within the political system, which is a composition of both leaders and followers.
That's right.
And as a result of this dysfunction that exists within the system, you find that the crop of people who are sent to position of authority do not feel themselves responsible to the people. And this is what you have. And where you do not have structures in place, functioning efficiently, where you do not have institutions in place acting in accordance with the whims and caprices of the rule of law,
that's right,
which is about the people, then naturally the outcome, a consequence of that will be that you will find that people find themselves in position of authority and assume that it is their personal right,
property, and the rest of the people are disenfranchised.
You're answerable to them.
That's right.
And that's why the notion of leader-follower in Nigeria is an abstract. What we have is rulers and
underlings.
so it's like, it's like a slave-master relation. You'll find it, and that's why I'm saying this is one thing that is peculiar with African politics, and that's why the likes of Ali Mazrui, God bless his soul, constantly argued that the major challenge with African politics in contemporary times, again, like with every social problems, there are no single causes, it is multifaceted, it is multidimensional. We've talked about the history, the impact of colonialism, the external factors, but the reality is that there are internal contradictions that are driving the problem of African politics.
Thank you. You see, based on that, I would like to go back to my my studio. We have a clip of protest in Sudan, which I would like you to bring up shortly. What you just said now goes in tandem with what happened in Sudan. The people felt, well, we've had enough of the military rulership. We brought in the civilians. The military came in again, and they're trying to wangle their way into a kind of collaboration in governance of the military. And the people are saying, no, we don't want that. If we're going to have a military rule, so be it. But now we want a civilian government, and the people are fighting for that. Let's have a clip, a look at that clip from the Sudan.
أي انقلاب مرفوض، أي انقلاب مرفوض، حتى بعد صعود حمدوك للحكومة. نحن ثورتنا ثورة ديسمبر المجيدة من أجل مؤسسات مدنية ومن أجل سلطة مدنية كاملة وليس أشخاص وأفراد.
The police also fired tear gas to try and disperse the demonstrators. Ahead of the protest, security forces sealed off major roads leading to the airport and army headquarters. The demonstrations also took place in other cities as well to mark the 3rd anniversary of the protest that started a popular uprising that led to long-time leader Omar al-Bashir being overthrown. Despite security forces blocking bridges in the capital, the protesters were able to cross a bridge connecting the city of Omdurman to central Khartoum.
What you've seen there is the demand of the people, the rights of the people, and they are showing that via what is called protest. In most cases, we have for peaceful protests, but there are instances where it goes a scale higher. But at the same time, the idea is if you do not protest, you won't get the desired effect. Nobody will listen to you. So you need to propagate. You need to show what you mean by coming out to say it loud and clear. My brother, like you've seen there, and based on what you've said earlier, putting the African political system in context.
Yes.
We've seen that in Sudan playing out. And the people are now fighting against it. I want to believe that if the people in Chile can move away from the old schools, in quote, to that 35-year-old Gabriel Boric, and the people in Sudan are saying, we've had enough of you, the followers of Omar al-Bashir. Yes. We've had enough of you guys. Go back to your barracks and leave us alone to run this. If we factor these two things together, what is happening in South America and what is happening in East Africa, and to use your word, that politics in itself is a global thing, in as much as we tend to one basic tenet.
Yes.
Put these two factors together, look in terms of what the Sudanese are doing and what we should expect from situations like that.
Yeah.
Because you used the word earlier, you said you don't like the word. So also nothing is a problem. It's better it is a challenge where we're going to find solutions to.
Yes, yes.
Now looking at these two parameters, look at it as a challenge and then look at it as a situation where we should find solutions for.
You see, the reality is this, that again, I return to Ali Mazrui. See, Ali's argument was that the problem, or rather the challenge, as we have said, with the African political system is basically a situation whereby leaders in Africa today, coming from the base from which they have come, which is the traditional system of authority, and having democracy shoved down their throats and being swallowed line, hook, and sinker, cannot see themselves jettisoning their old way of life, which is the traditional system of authority, whereby leadership is basically hereditary in most cases, is monarchical in some other context. And he's saying, exactly, and he's saying that not being able to let go of that traditional system of authority and embrace this modern liberal democratic structure or system is where the crisis is. And that's why he said we are in between, and he called it a position of communocracy. You see, Ali's argument is very simple, that African leaders, let's take a classical example. Yoweri Museveni in Uganda was the one who said it is only a fool who will leave the office through the ballots.
Can you
How else do you want to go? Through the bullets? So it literally tells you the mentality and psychosis of an average African leader who wants to have this, this hold on power, and therefore the sit-tight syndrome begins to play out. And wherever you find that people defy a system, a law that embodies what should be, naturally you will have a revolt against that system. And that's why you have political instability, such as the case you're seeing in Sudan, for example, today. That's why you have the case of, because these leaders have not legitimized themselves. And what distinguishes power from authority is legitimacy. So if you have not legitimized yourself, it means your stay in office will be questioned. People will point accusing will be pointing accusing fingers. So this is the natural consequence. This is the natural order of things. And therefore, the case of politics within this context, this is the reason why we're seeing this sort of play out. This is the reason why we find that people constantly revolt against the system, because leaders want to continue to hold on to positions of authority. And this is the irony of leadership. Again, to the followers, Julius Nyerere wrote in his book, The Tanzanian Leader, he said that Africans must free themselves from 4 aspects of, or rather must liberate themselves from 4 aspects of life before we can have the sweetness of freedom, of being able to nurture leaders and leadership. And he said, first, we must free ourselves or liberate ourselves from colonialism, and that we have been able to mildly do that. Secondly, he said we must liberate ourselves from neo-colonialism, and that we're at the stage or at the transformation process of trying to do that. So it means we're transcending. Thirdly, he said we must liberate ourselves from ourselves.
That's it. That's the top of the ladder.
And number 4, he said mental liberation. And that is the problem with us around here. You see, what galvanizes our politics is religion. These are the things that galvanizes our thought process. Our brains are hardwired towards thinking religiously, towards thinking regionally, towards thinking ethnically. Now, wherever you find that these primordial sentiments are the first priorities in terms of selection of leadership or election of leadership, at the end of the day, you will find that you are hell-bent, or rather you are stuck in a particular position, because this is what mental liberation is about. Because politics of religion, politics of ethnicity or ethnicism or whatever, it doesn't play out well. It is very slippery. And bad governance is like a stray bullet. It doesn't pick and choose.
Anybody.
Exactly. So you find that because we find ourselves at a crossroad where we are saying it has to be my religious person, it has to be my regional person, he must come into position of authority. At the end of the day, we enslave ourselves to these people. The same thing that the colonialists did to us then, divide and conquer. This is another technique of divide and conquer. So this is where a chunk of the problem is with the followership. And until we begin to question, until we begin to demand, as we have seen in Chile, until we begin to say, look, we are trying to embody the ideals of Mao Zedong, for example, who said all reactionaries are paper tigers. And by reactionaries, he's referring to leaders. And he said from a long time point of view, the real power belongs to the ordinary people. But how do you even question an authority when you do not know what powers you wield?
That's the big question. That's the big question. So on that note, how do we? Because the third factor of Nyerere was us against
liberating
ourselves. Us against
exactly.
Which you expatiated on by telling us that our mentality is wired towards religion, towards ethnic groups, towards this and that, to very primordial things. Yeah. We've been able to identify challenges. I always like situations where we look at the challenges and at the same time we look at solutions. Let's profile some bits and pieces of solutions.
Yes.
That Nigerians can share it with us. There are people out there that are listening to us. I trust my people. If I can tell myself, well, I'm above average, I'm a smart person, so also is the average Nigerian out there.
Precisely.
So I believe that if we put together our opinion, your own insightful insights, we throw it at Nigerians, I am very sure Nigerians will appreciate it and then improve on it. So give us bits and pieces of solutions to the challenges we'll be able to portray.
Thank you very much for bringing us here. I am one of those unrepentant optimists of the Nigerian dream.
I am too.
I believe so well that this country is going to get out of the woods. We're doing significantly well, like it or not, or whatever anybody wants to say out there. We're not where we were 20 years ago.
And I keep saying one thing, Nigeria has been on the verge of 1159 more than 5 times. And we didn't go down.
Exactly. So, that resilience, we are constantly coming back.
Yes.
That is the Nigerian spirit. And I want Nigerians out there listening to continue along this path. Because we're all stakeholders in the Nigerian project.
Of course, yes.
The moment, the day we begin to give, it was Dag Hammarskjöld, the former United Nations Secretary General, who said the quest for peace has its successes and setbacks.
Of course.
But that the day we stop searching for peace, that is when humanity stops to exist. We still have a bit of humanity left in us, as far as the Nigerian concept or the Nigerian idea is concerned. And we will be able to get out of the woods. Now, what we need to begin to do as leaders and as followers is basically very, very crucial. Everybody needs to understand his position and understand that the first way to get people out of a problem is to get into their thought process.
Yes.
That's where I constantly revert back to, because like I said here, our problem is not about the political system. We've tried it now with the parliamentary system,
all the kind of systems.
So there is nothing sacrosanct about the systems in themselves. It's about the people who are manning them. It is like you saying there is NEPAD, there is African peer review mechanism. Why is Africa where it is? No, it's about the people there. What is their thinking? How exactly do they perceive of issues? Exactly. So this is where we need to start from. We need to look. Education is not about going through institutions of higher learning. It's not about being a PhD and a professor. I know a lot of reading and writing illiterates. Being lettered is not being educated. So Nigerians need to begin to learn about things. You go out there and ask an average Nigerian about the budget, you'll be surprised. These guys you see selling shy with their radio to their ear, let them discuss international politics with you, you will be stunned. Something that an average 200-300 level student of diplomacy will not be able to tell you. So what we need to begin to do is to educate ourselves. And education is about understanding the predicament of your situation or your environment and being able to transform that to something better. In the interest of yourself and the people around you, because it starts with the self. What you don't have, you cannot transfer. So this is where we need to start. Change the way we perceive of things. And in this social psychological order, there are a lot of things that must be done. One of them is our drive towards the country Nigeria. Patriotism. It is lacking. We need to begin to revisit that.
How do we go about that? How do we go about that in short words?
Yes. How that plays out is this, that Nigerians have to first of all appreciate themselves. It is about you as an individual. And then
you first.
Exactly. Appreciate yourself and appreciate the context and society in which you were placed. God did not make a mistake by making you a Nigerian.
Of course, yes.
We must understand that. And until we understand that perception and embrace that perception, just like an American will say, I am an American first before any other thing. And he's willing to give his all for America. We need to begin to do that. Last time I recall I was on an interview and we're talking about recession. And I said in Japan in 1980s, when they were in a recession, women came out with their gold and their jewelries and they gave it to the state and said, sell and use it to get out of recession. As soon as I got out of the studio and looked at my phone, the first message I got was from my aunt. She said, you are a stupid boy.
Will you expect me to go pack my jewelry and sell for
tell the president's wife? Sorry, but then this was, a private conversation. So the point I'm trying to make is we need to begin to look at the Nigerian project as within the I syndrome context. And perhaps we'll be able to relate more to the challenges of the Nigerian society and be able to, on our own, within our individual context, profess specific solutions. So patriotism is very, very crucial.
Very key.
Secondly, we need to begin to enlighten ourselves on happenings around leadership. You see, there's a huge gap. We have a lot of people who have parochial reasoning in terms of our relation to political spaces, and therefore we have become so apolitical. Allowing people or leaving governance to people in position of authority, or rather saying that I don't care about politics, it is not very helpful. It doesn't do us any good. At the end of the day, as Baldwin has said, if you do not indulge in politics, then you allow idiots to govern you.
To govern you. You have no say at all.
Exactly. So we need to begin to question ourselves, to question the system. Because like Mao Zedong said, that the real power from the long-time point of view belongs to you and I, the ordinary people on the street. So a lot needs to be done in terms of on the aspects of the followers, but a lot more needs to be done by those who find themselves in position of authority. Because again, you see, like with security, like with the recession we're faced with, like with the height in, the mismatch in the micro and macroeconomic policies, like with the problems of the physical structure of Nigerian state and all that, this rests with the leadership. And until the leadership begins to provide governance and try to move away from the art of politicking alone, because this is where politicians like to get it all twisted. The moment they get to position of authority, they continue to raise dust. It's about politicking for them.
That's right.
The art of politicking must stop. You must begin to focus on governance. And governance is about bringing infrastructure to the people. People misplace and take out of context the speech that was made by the teacher of J.F. Kennedy, which he plagiarized, and said that it is not you asking what America can do for you, but what you can do for America. He started from somewhere. He talked about all of the infrastructures that the United States has put in place. And he said, and I quote, that America has created an enabling environment for you to strive and thrive. Therefore, ask not what America can do for you, but what you can do for America.
Has done it so
but our leaders will begin to tell you from that last bit of the story. No, we will not accept that. You go to the beginning now. Have you been able to create an enabling environment? Are the infrastructures in place? What is the condition of Nigeria's HDI? What is the condition of maternal mortality in this country? What is the condition with education in this country? What is the condition with housing in this country?
All those are
and you
parameters of
expect
government.
people to think properly? You expect people to focus with less than 30,000 naira minimum wage? How?
Impossible. That's impossible.
So a lot needs to be done. Leaders need to understand that they must provide those basic things because you have signed a social contract
with the people.
There's a reason why we are not all ministers. There's a reason why we are not all governors. There's a reason why we are not all president, because somebody has told us, I can do the job for you. So it is not fair for anybody to sit in that position and say, my hands are tied. What you do honorably is get out of there for people whose hands are untied to come and do the job.
That's true.
That's exactly what should be done.
That's pretty true. And thank you. You see, like, I always enjoy your presence in studio. And honestly, I'm not going to let go of you. Might not be today. Subsequently, I'll call you back on so that we can share ideas, and then not just between us in the studio, with fellow Nigerians listening to us.
Gladly.
And to you, my viewers, one of the major things we discussed out here affects your person. Like I said, in the word state of the nation, where we hasten the motions for national development, I added a caveat. When it comes to national development, it is for you and I to make possible. We've been able to learn from one aspect that affects us all. There is something wrong with our thought pattern. There is something wrong with our belief system. There is something wrong with our reaction to situations. There is a lot wrong with us as followers. And the biggest of them is there is a lot wrong with the leaders that we have given our franchise to run the country, not on his own personal behalf, on our behalf. So like I keep saying, it is a collective thing. We are all in this together. And by God's grace, I believe it. I'm a positive thinker. Nigeria is work in progress. I said it earlier, we've had 1159 4 or 5 times, and we never crashed. We won't crash. We will keep improving in as much as you bring in your bit to the table. Join me in telling my brother here in the studio, thank you for honoring the invite and then sharing your insightful insights with us. It's important because, like you said, we all can be Mr. President, we all can be governors, we all can be ministers. It is the bits and pieces like this that we throw at the populace that affects their opinions, affects their thought pattern, and make Nigeria a better place.
Precisely.
Thank you for honoring the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to you, our viewers, thank you for keeping faith.